Hey artists, today I'm going to try a new tool. Actually, it's a series of tools that I bought on Amazon, and they're silicone brushes. This is a little bit of an overview. Some are a little bit smaller than the other ones. They're not rubber, they're kind of like this silicone, and there are some tips of varying like styles. Here's a very thin tip, round one. So we're going to try some of these today, and I'm just very curious to see if these are going to work on this sort of sculpture. So let's try out some of these tools. Before I was using this dental tool, what I like about these dental tools, they're very thin, but they seem to like really hold up over time because they're metal. These, I do not know if they are going to be holding up because they're silicone. So let's try it and push some of the clay around. So this one's already a bit too soft, but so if I go over the eye, for example, I can definitely do some things that are very difficult with a metal tool. This almost like helps create a very subtle type of thing. I think I am getting a little bit too wide with my head, so I'm going to be removing a little bit today, especially on the side here. I don't want it to be this wide. I think it's just, sometimes when you're just concentrating on the head, as I did last time, you kind of forget the overall proportion. So I'm just going to remove a little bit. I don't have to remove too much, but Jesus, she's got quite a melon on her. Yeah, I think this side got really big. Also, it's the illusion of the hair, because she's got like these little very thin sideburns. Yeah, I think I might have gotten just a little bit too big. Actually, that's about the size. One head from the chin to the top of the head, which is a little bit lower than the hairline here, is from the chin to the middle of the nipple, around there, usually is what is happening. Using this tool, it's a big scraper. I like to just run it across the entire surface just to get rid of all the lumps. And there are a couple other techniques. And if you do it like this, like a cross hatch pattern, and you can see I'm actually taking the tool and going across the figure. And the reason I do that is you want to go with the muscles. Now the muscles, the strands actually kind of go this way. For example, the deltoid, it goes like this. But I'm trying to make it cylindrical in order to accept the detail that I'm going to be adding in a little bit. And because the way you add clay, it tends to be a little bit lumpy, and it doesn't look very aesthetically pleasing. But if you use this, you can remove a lot of that imperfection. And even though it just looks like I'm making things imperfect, it's always good to have this kind of surface before you start to really get into the details of things. So this also blends the forms together. So I'm going to just do this throughout the figure. It shouldn't take too long to do. This is not like the fun part of sculpture, but it's an important part. And if you skip on this, often your figure is going to suffer. So I'm just going to take this and just run it across. The clay has also gotten much more firm, and in a way that's good because now it's not really going to move. So in this back, I'm just going to take the tool and I'm trying to create the roundness of the form going inside here. And one of the things that I do neglect is the modeling in between the arms and the torso. So at this point, if you just take your tool and you round off the arm, it's going to help you. So I'm just going to remove a little bit of the surface. This is also going to blend all the geometry together. I'm just going to take the tool try to create very rough surface and just round off any potential imperfections that you have in the sculpture. Also, the reason I have the light like this is that I want to be able to map out the shadows. Now, mapping out the shadows is not that important because it's more important towards the later stages. But if you keep in mind this shadow right here, this gets a little bit more diluted, and this one's sharp. That means that the transition is sharper here. And that's what you want. Right now at this point, I know that my bicep is a little bit too flat, so I might want to create that shadow a little bit more. And this actually gives it more drama if you do it that way. Just by putting that little bit, it defines that light and the direction of the arm. And this is something that towards the end we're going to do a lot more. Let's just keep doing this. You see, I'm removing a lot of the detail that I did because the detail is really not important at this point. And at a certain point, it is going to become important. But often details will just kind of fall into place. They don't need to be very prominent. I'm also taking this tool and fixing the base. And this really works really well. So let's take this across the belly here. And you can see, like, I just blend everything together with this. Using these rubber silicone tools, we can really... For this, you have to make sure that your clay is nice and wet, your tool is wet and clean. That's why I have these cloths here. The cloths also help. So with this, I find that this silicone thing is good for doing little details, say around the hair. So, and around the nose, you can kind of push it and model it. It's a really interesting tool. Nose and the cheek I'm not happy with. We're missing a little bit of the geometry behind the nose. Don't let your nose blend into the cheek. There's a plane underneath the nose that's a little bit flatter. Yeah, this tool works really well. I might even use a bigger tool. So the breast, I'm going to use this tool to kind of push it and just model it a little bit. It actually seems overkill to use this a little, but these rubber tools are better, I think, for details like this pointed one. If I wanted to create and work on the breast, I can do this, but I'm not used to the silicone style of tool. So let's see if I can. Previously I used brushes for details, but I wanted to try this out. So the nipples, they do go off to the side. You really have to pay attention to where they sit in the breast. They're usually more towards laterally, towards the outside, as opposed to the middle. And of course, this part kind of blends a little bit more. Now, we could change this as we go. It's just kind of very... There's no personality in it, but I just wanted to indicate it. You could also use your fingers to smooth things out if you wanted, but I really do not like the shininess that it creates. What I prefer is to take a cloth, a burlap cloth or a shop towel, and create a little bit of the modeling using that shop towel. And what I like about the shop towel is that you can move the clay where you want it, so you can really round everything off. And then later, maybe the tool is a better idea. So I'm going to blend the breast into the rib cage a bit, just by hitting it with this cloth. we can blend things a lot better. We also don't want to lose any of the geometry in the sculpture. I think one of the things that people tend to do is they get carried away with the smoothing. And a lot of sculpture is smooth, but they don't lose the details, like the fundamentals, the armature inside, the skeleton. That's the more important part, is not to lose that indication that there's something underneath holding up the flesh. Now, with the arm, I want to make sure that I feel the muscles. So I'm firmly pushing my finger in, but the cloth is abrasive, so it kind of acts as sandpaper. And that removes a lot of the imperfection. If something becomes too lumpy, look at it, and that's the beauty of having this light. You can see the imperfections in the form. Now, it would be better to have a white clay, and I prefer red clay. It just looks much more classical. But white clay, you can see the values a lot more. And it's the same thing with the model. If the model is too dark, then it's harder to see the values. There we go. If your cloth gets dirty, you probably have to wash it outside because it gets very dirty with clay. So just by doing this, we're rounding off the form of the arm. But right here, there's like some weird things happening. At one point, I did try and sculpt the deltoid and the bicep and the tricep. You're going to have to indicate it. This is the reason female models are so much harder to sculpt, because they have all the muscles, but it's just so subtle. So you really have to look for what is happening. So if I use my tool here, I know that the deltoid attaches here and it wraps around the acromion process, and this is the deltoid tuberosity, and then you have the bicep here and the triceps, the lateral head here. In the middle, there's a tendon, so there's always going to be a little bit of a depression, but on female models, it's almost non-existent because they don't have very intense muscles. On a male model, when you look at the arm, they usually have less fat, so you can see that distinction a whole lot more. It's kind of hard to tell artists use male models when they're learning instead of female models, because I found that a lot of people, they shy away from using male models. And female models in the DC metro area are much more successful and they get more bookings than male models. I've run a lot of sessions for models in the past, and I found that it's very sad because if you start using male models in your classes, students start to disappear because they don't find the male body as pleasing as the female body, which is very different from what antique sculptors and artists did in the past. In the past, they definitely saw more value in the male body as opposed to the female body. So, also, you want to keep all your tools together. Usually I'm trying to find tools that I just put everywhere. There we go. Right here. And towards this back part, you want to make the distinction of the back. The back should go in underneath the arm, and the arm will kind of come out. Really look at the folds, because the folds are also an indication of what is happening, and people usually neglect those. So that's a little bit on the arm. Let's move to the torso here, and don't rush. I am missing quite a bit especially even the face. Like everything just seems to bother me all the time. So here's a little bit of the clavicle. The deltoid on this side, I think, is going to be just a little bit wider here. So deltoid needs to come out a little bit. I'm just going to add a little bit. And now looking from this side, I realize that it does need quite a bit towards the back. You know, I've been adding, I made the sculpture a little bit undersized because I knew I'd be doing something like this. Okay, so I'm gonna change my model, and deltoid comes out pretty far, but I don't want to attach it to the hair. So I'm just kind of pushing it in. But that arm was just a little bit on the narrow side because you want the area where the deltoid tuberosity is and the triceps to be a little bit thicker as it goes down and kind of tapers off as it reaches the elbow. And just by doing this, so right here, like ask yourself, what's the widest point? And for me, that's going to be the widest point of our arm. That's because you have the deltoid coming up here, and the deltoid is like diamond shaped like this. And there's this part on the humerus, which is the bone, where that deltoid attaches. And usually when you find deltoids in a skeleton, there's a little bit of a rise, and it's a very big rise, and that's the insertion for the deltoid. So right here, and I still need to add a little bit more. So, and we do add a lot of clay. Like we do put a lot of clay into these things. This thing is fairly heavy at this point. It might not look it, but it's also solid. Remember, there's no armature inside. So we need to keep that in mind because we're going to dig a lot of this out also. So at this point, this part of the hair, I need to fill it in because you don't want it to be that deep. And also the back is going to be coming up. I think so. I'm going to add a little bit. That's going to be where the hair is. Make sure you push it in. Yeah, this is the first sculpture for New Year's, 2021. Kind of incredible. Well, we're starting out. I'm not sure what I'll sculpt next. I try not to come up with something too soon. Otherwise, like, I just want to finish this. One of the issues that I have is that as I'm working on this, I'm like, oh man, I hate this sculpture. I just want to start the new one. This was a bad idea. That's usually what I think. But that's something that, apparently that's very common. I don't know. Maybe you guys can tell me in the comments below. So arm, this part is a little bit thicker as well. And also, the legs are going to be a little bit thicker here. And take your tool when you need to add clay and push it down, and just gotta take that and push it around. So I want to create the roundness. And it helps to have a big tool like this to kind of push it in or use your fingers. Okay. So at this point it's a little bit thicker. You can tell it's creating a little bit more mass with the arm. I still believe it's a little bit too narrow up top. She's a little bit rounder. So I'm going to just add a little bit of clay. You know, at this point, it is difficult getting your, you know, for me, like I sculpt and then I get to this level, and this is the part that I find the hardest, like finishing it up. But I always tell myself the more I work it, the better it gets. There are people that I see on YouTube and they're just so incredible. Like they'll sculpt and paint something. Within 2 hours they have this beautiful artwork, but for me, like, it just seems so difficult. I don't know. I think maybe it's not encouraging people. Just adding a little bit of clay to the bottom. And I think I'm going to make this arm just slightly wider. Take my tool, kind of push it down. This way it mushes the clay like that. And now I'm going to take this and I'm just going to rock it back and forth. What this does is just push the clay inside, and I don't want to push the arm, so I'm going to hold. At this point, when the clay is this hard, it does take quite a bit of water to keep it nice and warm, and depending on the location, it just keeps getting drier quickly. And if I was to scoop out the insides, which eventually I'm going to do, probably in the next session, I'm going to scoop it out, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. There is a possibility of just kind of connecting a hole here and into the torso and having it vent through there without even having to remove anything out of the base. But we want to dig a lot of the torso, and especially the head. The head is very heavy, but it does have the hair as the support, so it's not too terrible of an issue. Okay. I like that this creates some really nice lines in here, and it's rubber, so it's easy to kind of push around a little, but you do have to control the amount of water your clay has. With oil, you don't have to worry about that. So right now my shoulder and the arm, it needs to be a little bit wider, don't you think? I think it does. So the acromion, so that means that this part is going to have to be bigger because it's going to hold the hair. And I'm trying to be sensitive with the clay because I don't want to push it in and have it fall. All right, artists, today this is pretty much what I've gotten. You can see I have been starting to put some details, including the clavicles, the muscles, and I've been rounding the form. Now, I made an initial error with the size of the arm, but I think at this point I'm just trying to finish it up. The next few sessions I am going to be doing details. I'll probably concentrate on chunks of the body because, you know, there's just so much to do. And I did kind of work on it all at the same time. And I do recommend that, like, work in the entire sculpture and then focus in on details. And I think maybe tomorrow I'll work on this part, maybe the torso, and then maybe another day the arms, and then another day the legs, and then of course the back is a little bit more difficult. There's a lot of things happening and you have to kind of figure out what exactly you want to do. But it's all roughed out. All the anatomy is there. If I want to get and push details, then that's when I'll be doing them. And then there is another section that I'll be doing is removing the insides of the sculpture and hollowing it out because we want to put this in the kiln to fire it. All right, artists, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.